We're supposed to take your word over Justice Alito's word. We're supposed to take your word over a lady who gave you dollars donated to your cause, Miss Gail Wright. You're disparaging her name, Justice Alito's name, and the court. And you have this, which obviously didn't happen. We got the transcript, we got the audio, but you made it a big deal in your book. One thing I've learned, people who mislead folks on small things, mislead them on big things. And you know what? You can lie in a book, it's not a crime. You can lie to the New York Times, that's not a crime. But when you come in front of Congress, and you say things that are not true, you're not allowed to do that.
Jim Jordan rakes turncoat Robert L. Schenck across the coals on the House floor. I'm Rob on the right. Let's go take a look.
March 2020, on the steps of the Supreme Court, Senator Schumer said, quote, "I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you." April of last year, the Democrat chairman of the House Judiciary Committee introduced legislation to add 4 associate justices to the United States Supreme Court, to pack the court. May 2nd of this year, the draft opinion of the Dobbs decision was made public. The next day, May 3rd, the very next day, attacks on churches, crisis pregnancy centers begin. They occur around the country and they continue for months. Over 100 churches, crisis pregnancy centers attacked since the leak of that opinion. Now, you know what they call all that? You know what all that's called? Intimidation. Threats against Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, threats to pack the court, leaking of an opinion, and attacks on churches, a concerted effort by the left to intimidate the highest court in our land. And I didn't even mention the lies told about Justice Kavanaugh in 2018 during his confirmation process. I didn't mention when Senator Joe Biden and Senate Democrats drove Justice Alito's wife to tears during his confirmation hearing. And I didn't mention the Democrats on this committee who have for the last year attacked Justice Thomas and his wife. And now today, a hearing about 8-year-old secondhand hearsay. 8-year-old secondhand hearsay from a witness who for 18 years took money from pro-life donors, $30 million, and then this year, all of a sudden remembers, just weeks after the Dobbs leak happened, that 8 years ago, he heard that at a dinner party, Justice Alito told his guests that they would like the Hobby Lobby decision. Just now remembers that. Mr. Schenck wasn't there. Justice Alito said Mr. Schenk's story is not true. The dinner guest said Mr. Schenk's story is not true. The Supreme Court said Mr. Schenk's story is not true. Politico said, quote, "We spent several months, attempting to corroborate Schenk's claim, but were unable to locate anyone who heard about the decision from Alito or his wife before its release." Let me just say that part of that again. We were unable to locate anyone who heard about the decision from Alito before its release. And even the New York Times who broke the story, they said there are gaps in Mr. Schenk's account. Gaps in his account. That's liberal speak for this story doesn't add up. But I'll tell you something that did happen. The Dobbs draft opinion was in fact leaked, and it was made public on May 2nd, 2022. And after that leak, as I've said, dozens and dozens of churches were attacked. Dozens and dozens of pro-life crisis pregnancy centers were attacked. Protests occurred at Supreme Court justices' homes, and there was an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh. But to date, in this Congress, not one hearing in the House Judiciary Committee about that leak. Not one hearing about the real leak, but here we are today at the end of the session having a hearing on the fake leak. From a witness whose story even the liberal press says, quote, "We were unable to locate anyone who can corroborate what he said." That's what we're doing. So I hope maybe in the last week or two of this session of Congress, maybe we can begin to look into what happened with the Dobbs decision, how that leak took place. I think that would be something that would merit our time and attention. I would also point out this, Mr. Chairman, before I yield back. We just got his testimony. We're supposed to get his testimony the night before. We just at 12:20, we get his testimony for a 10 o'clock hearing. Been nice if we'd had that as well. With that, I yield back.
After watching a number of these House proceedings, I noticed that both sides use this tactic, turning in documents or evidence at the very last moment so the other side doesn't have time to review it. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that maybe there should be a rule that says they have to turn in documents before a certain time or else they're not admissible? Let me know down in the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield my time to Chair Jordan.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Shank, did Gail Wright really tell you that?
Yes.
Justice Alito said he didn't tell her. She said she didn't tell him, but you're sure she told you?
Absolutely.
Now, you wrote a book a couple of years ago, is that right? 2018, you wrote a book?
Yes.
I want to read a section from that book. It's a section where you relate you and your family attended oral arguments at the court. You were there in the courtroom, and that directly involved your brother Paul, also a reverend. And I just want to read this section. You said, with the single rap of the gavel, Chief Justice William Rehnquist announced, "We'll hear argument first this morning in number 95-1065, Reverend Paul Shank and Dwight Saunders versus Pro-Choice Network of Western New York." Paul and I winked at each other, knowing we had made history with that reverend in his name. It had been a minor victory when we persuaded the court that reverend should remain before Paul's name, even though we had been told repeatedly that legal briefs never included such titles. You thought it was important that, obviously based on what you said, you thought it was important that the title Reverend be in front of Paul's name, is that right?
Correct.
And why was that?
Because we saw it as a religious liberty matter, and that would make it clear that it fit in that category.
Did Chief Justice Rehnquist really say that, the way I just read it from your book?
I can't say that I remember that.
Well, you're pretty darn specific here. You got the number, case number 95-1065. Very next word says Reverend Paul Shank. You made it a big deal. Thought it's the first time it's ever happened. I'm just asking, did it really happen?
I wish I could tell. I would have to go back and review that.
So it may not have?
Possibly not.
Why do you say possibly not? You were emphatic in your book.
I would have to go back.
We did go back. We did go back, and I got the transcript right here. Proceedings, 10:05 a.m., Chief Justice Rehnquist. We'll hear argument first this morning in number 95-1065, Paul Shank and Dwight Saunders versus Pro-Choice Network of Western New York. Did you hear it?
I did.
Was there a word missing?
Title Reverend.
Yeah, wasn't in there. In your book, you said it was a big deal, so much so that you winked at your brother. Did you wink at your brother?
Yes.
What'd you wink for if it wasn't in the title?
Well, it was our case.
But that's not, you said you winked because they included Reverend in the title, and the transcript says Mr. Rehnquist didn't.
Perhaps not.
Perhaps? Court reporter get it wrong? Did he say it and the court reporter get it wrong?
Well, then.
Well, we got the audio too. I'm going to play that for everyone to hear.
We'll hear argument first this morning, number 95-1065, Paul Shank and Dwight Saunders versus Pro-Choice Network of Western New York.
Reverend, did you hear that?
I did.
Was there a word missing that's different from what you put in your book?
A title, yes.
What was that title?
Reverend.
Reverend was not there. Right? Did you wink at your brother?
I think I did. In fact, I think I actually hooked him.
So now you got more details. You got the key detail wrong, what you were writing about in your book, but now you remember an additional detail. You not only winked, you elbowed your brother. Even though the reason for the wink in your writing was the fact that Reverend was using the title, something that had never been done, but it wasn't used. But we're supposed to believe you today. We're supposed to take your word over Justice Alito's word. We're supposed to take your word over a lady who gave you dollars donated to your cause, Miss Gail Wright. You're disparaging her name, Justice Alito's name, and the court. And you have this, which obviously didn't happen. We got the transcript, we got the audio, but you made it a big deal in your book. One thing I've learned, people who mislead folks on small things, mislead them on big things. And you know what? You can lie in a book, it's not a crime. You can lie to the New York Times, that's not a crime. But when you come in front of Congress and you say things that are not true, you're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. And we have seen it. You're not supposed to do that. I yield back.
Jim is obviously frustrated with this guy, and I think we're all disgusted with how much people can lie in Congress and not be held accountable. I think we can all agree that it's time for the Republicans to play hardball and push back on these lying Democrats.
The gentleman for yielding. Mr. Schenk, how did the New York Times get the story?
They called me and asked me to confirm facts surrounding what they had heard about a 2014 leak of the Hobby Lobby decision.
What prompted them to call you?
They said they had learned some facts about the case, and they were asking me if it was true.
From whom?
They did not, the reporters did not tell me from whom they learned it.
Just out of the clear blue sky, they come say, hey, did Miss Wright at a dinner party hear from Justice Alito the outcome of a pending case, in particular the Hobby Lobby case, and did she call you? How did they know the facts? The alleged facts, because they're not facts. I don't think it happened.
That was not the question they asked me. The first call from reporter Jody Cantor, I think it was something along the lines of, we are aware of a possible prior leak and that you were involved, and can we ask you some questions about that? It was words to that effect.
And what did you say then?
I said I was not prepared to talk about that.
Okay, but then you've subsequently talked to the New York Times, so when did you call them back?
It was probably days to, I would say certainly multiple days. I was very conflicted. I wanted to keep this a private matter. I did not intend to go public with it.
Do you remember the date that you did call the New York Times back and tell them the alleged story that you've shared here today?
It may have been late May. I would have to consult my notes on that.
Well, let me ask it this way. You said this to the New York Times after the actual leak of the Dobbs opinion.
Let me think about that for a minute, Congressman.
I'm trying to figure out where it fits in. You have the Dobbs leak on May 2nd. You write a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts, on June 7th. When did you talk to the New York Times?
Sometime, I would have to check again, but it was sometime in late May to early June.
So before you sent so it was more important to talk to the press about this leak than it was to put the court on notice of something that's so egregious that you're here today testifying in front of Congress.
Oh, I was in great turmoil about the whole matter, Congressman. I was literally praying on it. I was agonizing over it,
Well, I appreciate
wondering
that.
what I should do about
Prayer
it.
is important. I appreciate that. But you did it before you sent the letter to the Chief Justice.
Off the record, strictly off the record, I did answer some questions.
Well, now we're talking off the record. Why off the record? If it's so darn important, you're praying for it, why not just tell them? More importantly, if you really want this to happen, why not go to the Chief Justice first? Why not go to the court first? If you're so concerned, this is so egregious, we got to come forward, even though, why not do that? But no, you said, I'm going to go off the record with the New York Times.
Well, it sounds to me like the Reverend swam in waters he shouldn't have been swimming in. This is a highly nuanced subject, and I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And if you like watching Jim Jordan call out these left-leaning liberals, check out this video where he leans into Stacey Plaskett. Seriously, he totally eviscerates her. Check it out. And if not, see you around the campus.